Hey everybody, welcome to Phenomenal Phenomena, Instructional Shifts in Biology. The purpose of this professional development is to move from science that's taught to learn facts, which you can see from this picture here. It can be quite boring. You've got somebody lecturing and the students are not engaged. And what we want to do is move to where we see this on the right, where you see the students that are engaged in science for exploration. They're not bored. They're not sleeping, and there isn't a teacher that's feeding them facts that they have to memorize. They're actually doing science. So the purpose of this PD is to understand the LSS in life science and the instructional shifts. We also want to understand the instructional process that's outlined in the newly released scope and sequence documents that were released from the state, and to understand how to use the newly released Next Gen Storylines resources that the state has given us. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to summarize the new Louisiana Student Standards in Biology, and those are going to be titled Life Science Standards on the scope and sequence documents. We're also going to look at those scope and sequence documents and determine which option we've chosen for our parish. We're going to look at the instructional shifts. So you're going to see why we have chosen to go from traditional to inquiry-based learning and give some examples of what that looks like. We're going to take a short break after that. When you come back, you're going to have some teacher activities to do. You're going to look at what phenomena are, okay? And then you're going to see how you can implement phenomena-based learning in your classroom. You're going to observe a lesson that was given by Next Gen Storylines. You're going to see what that might look like in your classroom. Then you're going to have some development time where you can spend some time either independently or with your PLC, and you'll be able to use that lesson that was given to us by Next Gen Storylines and develop it for your own classroom. So the GLEs of the past were supposedly updated back in 2004, which is a long time ago. But truly, these are really haven't changed much since the 90s. We have these scientific inquiry skills right up here at the top. And what they're doing in these is they're asking you to choose appropriate models, to identify scientific evidence. And they're not actually developing any models. They're actually just choosing them. The content is geared towards front loading the students with notes. So you're just giving them PowerPoints, you're giving them definitions. They're identifying evidence. They're not actually doing any science. So what we've done is we've moved to these LSS, or Louisiana Student Standards. Last year, all of science, physical science, earth science, environmental science, all transitioned to the Louisiana Student Standards. Biology is finally adopting them this year because we're a high stakes testing. We finally got a LEAP 2025 that we're going to use this year. Notice that this is much more in depth. Students are expected to construct an explanation based on evidence. So they're not just identifying evidence like they did with the GLEs, but they're constructing an explanation based on evidence. They're actually doing science. They're developing an idea. So here you have this performance expectation. This is your standard that they need to be able to master. This is not going to happen in one class period. There are about 4 to 5 of these per unit. So it's going to be a drawn out process. You have a clarification statement. This will just give you a little bit more detail about what they need to be able to do to master this performance expectation. You've got your science and engineering practices. This is what we used to call our scientific inquiry. Our DCI, or disciplinary core ideas, that is going to be more of your content and vocabulary of what they need to know. And then our cross-cutting concepts, cause and effect. There are about 7 of these, and these are the things that you're going to be able to do in all your sciences: physical science, earth science, and environmental. So why have we shifted into this LSS and gotten away from these GLEs and this traditional way of teaching science? Well, just to be clear too, Louisiana did do a little bit of modification with the nation adopting these NGSS, or Next Generation Science Standards. A lot of the states have taken the NGSS and adopted them to fit their own state. Louisiana did very little modification. Is very, very similar to the NGSS. So this slide right here, just a little bit of background. This was pulled directly from the scope and sequence presentation that was presented at the Teacher Leader Summit. The changes that we are looking for in science. It's asking the students to do more than just learn about science and memorize facts, but to act like scientists by actually doing science. What the state wants us to do is they want us to have students make connections and apply science to the real world. So it's doing science. Science instruction must integrate the practices or behaviors of scientists and engineers. So they're investigating, and here's that word again, real world phenomenon, and designing solutions to problems. So it's much more real world. And here is what you really came for. I know you really have been waiting for this. You want to know which option are we using and why, and how are we going to do this in our classroom. So this is the Louisiana scope and sequence. This is option A. Option A is our very traditional way of doing things. It's at least our traditional order. It's still going to be inquiry based. It's still not going to be PowerPoints, notes, and memorization, but it's at least the traditional order. Okay, so you would start out here with your molecules and organisms, cells, organization of life, moving to genetics, and then to ecology, evolution, and this is your ecology mixed with evolution, where you would go into population dynamics, things like that. And then it'll have right here your clusters of standards. So unfortunately, I will have to tell you, we will not be using this option. Even though it is a little more traditional, Ascension Parish is not using this option. Don't stress. We are going to go with option B. And there are a lot of reasons, and it did take us a really long time to come up with this decision. A decision was made by, there was a teacher representative from every school in the district. There was central office representation, and there were teacher coaches involved in this decision. What we did decide was that we were going to use this because the state told us that in 2019, 2020, the option A will not even be available. This will be the only option. So we decided we're going to go ahead and hit the ground running. Another reason that we decided was that there are actually units already available for this. So Unit 1, Evolution, there's a unit already ready. It actually has this anchor phenomenon about Addie. It's already ready with lessons laid out minute by minute if you want to use them. There are student handouts and everything already available. So it gives us a jumping off point with how to teach using that phenomenon-based learning, and gives us a place to start without actually having to create anything from scratch because we have resources. So that's what this little asterisk here means. These with the double asterisk, these units are going to be available. Genetics is supposed to be ready in September, and these other two are supposed to be ready by the end of the summer. So we will have resources, and we're going to watch a lesson that is from this first unit. You're going to watch some clips of that, and that's where your development time is going to be used at the end of this professional development session. You'll have some time to look at this lesson, this very first lesson, and really think about how you could use this in your classroom. Okay, so that shift from traditional to inquiry. So traditionally, we might teach cells and say, okay, here's the mitochondria. This is what it looks like. And we might show it on a cell diagram and have the students label it and say it's the powerhouse from the cell. It synthesizes energy. And then we might have our students do the cell city analogy project. But what we would do in inquiry-based learning is to have the students learn how the cells contribute to the survival of the organisms and have them develop an evidence-based argument to explain why animals need cells. Okay, so whereas textbooks might lay out the facts and the definitions, we're going to actually encourage the students to develop explanatory models so that they're not just learning about the scientific activities, but they're figuring out those ideas. Rather than using the experiments to observe what we already taught them, they're actually going to investigate to develop the models and the ideas so that they can explain the world around them. So this is extremely real life. They're investigating rather than just observing and explaining what we already told them was true. So if you do have any more questions, this is another example based on Reiser. This is a guy that is very in the Next Gen Storylines website, and I'm going to give you another one of his websites here in just a minute, but it just shows you that it's learning about the science ideas, what we used to do, but what we're now doing is figuring out how and why it works. They're developing models to explain why we have cells, why we need energy from food, and how we get it. So an explanation by Reiser is right here at nextgenstorylines.com. nextgenstorylines.org. This is where you can find some more information. So we're going to take a quick break, and I will see you guys soon.